Hi, it's Nick Aster with TriplePundit.com. I'm here at the 2013 Sustainable Brands Conference in San Diego, California. I'm here with Bill Shireman. He is the president of Future 500, who is essentially a stakeholder engagement company. Is that how you describe yourself?
We're a nonprofit, and we do stakeholder engagement between major companies and the activist stakeholders that tend to be very much at odds with one another over environmental, social, human rights issues.
Perfect. So one of the founding principles of Triple Pundit is this constant desire to bridge these divides that exist between the types of factions that you just mentioned, activists and companies, environmentalists and companies, social activists, and so on. Tell me a little bit about how in the world you go about doing this, because we're so wired to have this duality of good and evil and
Very much, yeah.
Something to battle.
Yeah, well, the culture of activism, and I come from the activist community myself, although I've also been in charge of and started businesses. And the culture of the activist community is an adversarial culture. It is to some degree opposing the old order. And in order to attract attention, attract interest, attract media, attract dollars, it's important to have an enemy, a demon enemy. And so there's a tendency, first of all, to believe that corporations are just profit-hungry demons. And then there's a tendency to want to caricaturize that even further and use that to advance a campaign. That can be effective for calling attention to an issue and a problem and getting it in the media. The problem is that the tools you use to call attention to also create incredible division between you and the companies. And they also tend to perpetuate illusions about the simplicity of these complicated situations. When a company is doing something or found to be doing something that has a negative social consequence, it's not just because a company is evil or wrong and could just change on a dime. These are complicated issues, and the people who carry out the campaign that calls attention to this have to be very different in their approach than the people who then are trying to resolve and solve a problem. Mm-hmm. So in our situation, we're kind of dealing with this cultural difference between finding the demon, calling attention to the demon, and then doing the much more nuanced work of trying to find a systemic solution to the problem. Mm-hmm. And that means that rather than focusing on, let's say, a single company, a single product that all of this attention has been on, we need to move it to a higher level, a more systemic level that involves a broader set of solutions. And we find that the activist community and the business community sometimes get stuck at that level of conflict, like, this is the bad product and we have to eradicate this product, and that's where the negotiation goes, when in fact there's really a higher level issue involved, and if you get to that higher level you can reach common ground that will benefit both. So that's what we try to get to common ground, higher level common ground, more systemic solution that is in the long run beneficial to the company and that actually advances the underlying mission of the NGO group.
Fantastic. Philosophically, this gets me really excited, but can you give me an example of a real on the ground, something you've addressed and seen progress on?
Well, here's a complicated one. Asia Pulp and Paper is a company that for decades has been a very large global paper company based in Indonesia and deforesting the rainforests in Indonesia to provide very inexpensive paper for a variety of different purposes. Greenpeace, Rainforest Action Network, WWF, and others have called attention to this problem and have convinced some of the big brands that used to buy from AP&P to switch and no longer purchase from them. That has created a business condition where it is in APP's interest to now shift, and they have made a bold, dramatic commitment to shift their practices. Now we enter into the real world of trying to implement that. And it's a bold commitment, it's a courageous commitment, it's a commitment that certainly they made because they were under a lot of pressure, but they have made the commitment, and that's a good step forward. So what I think the activist groups are now grappling with is to what extent do they cheer and celebrate and reward APP for making the commitment, to what extent do they hold back? And the customers as well that have now left APP, to what extent do they return? And this is the complex area that we're navigating in right now, working with these groups who are glad that the commitment has been made, but suspicious that it might not be kept, either because the company isn't serious or because it just turns out to be more difficult than anticipated. The companies that want to buy from APP again because they want to reward a positive step forward, but they don't want to step too far and buy too fast. And if they buy too much, maybe the company doesn't feel motivated to complete. But if they buy too little, then the company isn't rewarded for making the step, and other companies don't do that either. So it's a complex situation. Now it's no longer good guy versus bad guy. Now it's just people trying to get the job done, and so trust building has to enter into the situation, and trust but verify has to enter into the situation, and real world problems and nuances that are not very common for groups like a Greenpeace, RAND, WWF to grapple with. Now they have to grapple with those. And so the way isn't clear, and we try to facilitate that and enable people to take those steps so that we have full implementation of the commitments that are made, and even go beyond those commitments to the extent that we can, to make sure that the companies that do change are rewarded in the marketplace, make more money as a consequence, and that the activists are rewarded for their activism, but that they also move beyond just the demonization process and become proud of making change in the real world, where real people who aren't good or bad fundamentally, but that are a little bit of each, actually can take steps forward.
Brilliant. I think as complex as it is, you've managed to succinctly explain a wildly complicated situation.
It is. And it's fascinating to see it go forward. There'll be a lot of sweat and a lot of hard work involved, and I think a lot of nervousness on the part of all parties, and a lot of very maturing, I think, on both sides, as they will learn not to be warriors, but to collaborate uncomfortably toward a common goal.
Well, we'll certainly be following along. Bill, thanks very much for your time.
All right, thank you. Great.